Now then, you're very welcome back. So we are looking ahead to what should be a brilliant weekend's hurling. Semi-final weekend has become one of those weekends that is not to be missed in the hurling calendar, and it lines up as follows. Kilkenny against Clare is Saturday 5:30 throw-in. We have Limerick against Galway on the Sunday at 3:30. To preview, very happy to say, we are joined by All-Ireland winners both. Jamesie O'Connor, you're there, Jamesie?
Joe, yeah, how are things?
And Eddie Brennan, good to talk to you again. Hello.
Good evening, Joe. You made it home.
Yes, we were in Derry last week at a road show, and there was a great crowd there, and afterwards we sat up and had a beer too, listened to Brennan Devaney tell stories. The big takeaway I had, Eddie, is that when you hear Brennan Devaney tell you stories, you realise you haven't lived very much. You've lived a sheltered life generally by comparison.
Yeah, no, geez, an enjoyable couple of drinks, real character, and I can't wait for his book.
It's with the lawyers. So to look ahead to the weekend, we might just take a diversion by glancing back at the Kilkenny-Clare rivalry. So we were just chatting yesterday and thinking, is this a storied rivalry or one that goes back to decades? And it's really interesting in that effectively Kilkenny and Clare don't play each other, but it really bubbled up during your time. So in championship history, Kilkenny and Clare have only played each other 7 times total. Now, the first of them was in 1932 when Laurie Maher was doing his thing, and Kilkenny won the All-Ireland final. It was 3-3 to 2-3 in 1932. So that was the first of 7. The other 6 all come, extraordinarily really, they all come between 97 and 06. So it kind of bubbled up, and there was a 2002 All-Ireland final, which people will remember. So Clare, to kick off that mini period of the rivalry, Clare were winners in 1997. And then there was one draw in there, and Kilkenny won the rest. So I was kind of curious to get a sense, even from your point of view, Eddie, when I would think of that period from Kilkenny's viewpoint, it would be very much about the Cork rivalry, and that's how people would remember that period, Kilkenny and Cork tussling it out. I don't know how to ask this politely. Did you see Clare, like sometimes a team thinks they have a rivalry with another team, but the other team knows that's not really, we kind of have them taken care of. Did you see that Clare team as a big rival during that time?
No, and I think quite the opposite. They were the benchmark, really. They were definitely the benchmark in terms of bringing, we'll say, hurling forward in relation to physical fitness and kind of that high octane, high energy, high intensity type play. I think someday if you could get Brian to sit down with you, he may not admit it, but I definitely think Brian looked at that Clare team, how they played, and I think he definitely held them up in his own head as this is where we need to go if we're going to be successful, because they brought hurling to a different level. So in that regard, I think, and again for me, as a minor in '96, I was up at the All-Ireland in '95. Clare were a team that had brought hurling forward a little bit, so they were the mark at the time with Offaly, and obviously that golden generation of the 90s hurling. And when I think I played one of my first matches with Kilkenny was up in Gordon one evening, and that Clare team at the time, who were probably slightly on a transition really, I think, because you had some of the older crew moved on, and then we landed into 2002 where I think Sir Lyons was in charge, and we had, we met them in an All-Ireland final. And I think my memory of that All-Ireland final was, we found out the following season was that we had got something like 18 or 19, maybe more hooks and blocks, that some guy down in Waterford IT had done a study of that match, and that Kilkenny had turned over or hooked or blocked or successfully tackled Clare in around 18 or 20 times, and a lot of our scores came from that. So that was the first maybe of stats and stuff like that. But just remembered for a day that DJ played 2 matches in that season, and I think he got a very famous goal that day and a famous point even. And look, it was my first All-Ireland starting, and I think I got the honour of making way to give John Power a gallop.
In that, so 97, James, as I mentioned, that was when Clare obviously beat Kilkenny in semi-final, and then over the subsequent 5 matches, bringing you through to 06, there was a draw, but Kilkenny came out on top. The sense from afar would be teams going in opposite directions and different eras starting and ending. What's your memory of those matches? Because 6 in that brief time is quite a lot.
Yeah, I suppose. Look, I mean, '97. Obviously, we got over Kilkenny in the semi-final. '99, Joe, we lost Munster final to Cork. I missed that game. I'd broken my arm against Tip, and we were kind of at that stage, I'd say, coming to the end, because we were capable of kind of massive performance one day and then been flat the next. We were lucky to get out of jail, I think, against Tip in the draw Munster semi-final, and kind of beat them well in the replay. And like that, then we met Galway, I think, in the qualifiers. Got out of jail the first day, and then kind of played really well, kind of, I think, in subsequent games. So we Kilkenny in the semi-final, and I just remember about that game. DJ got a magical goal. I think he just caught a ball, just drifted in, maybe caught a ball over Liam Doyle and just went in and stuck it. And that kind of, was a tight enough game, I think, up to that point. And that just, put a bit of daylight between the two sides. So that was the first game, I suppose, when, under Brian Cody and the team was kind of coming. But Joe, I remember an awful lot about that game in 2000 that Eddie referenced in Gorn. Because obviously Kilkenny lost the final, and to me, Cody learned something from that. And when we met Kilkenny in 2000 in Gorn, we had trained ridiculously hard. Ahead of that championship, Lognan got the training, I think, badly wrong. We were, we just had totally overdone it. We really overtrained, and we went down to play them in a pitch opening in Gorn on Sunday evening. And it was a statement of intent from them, because I think they saw us maybe as contenders, and it was a case of lay down America here, and they just ate us alive. And I remember marking Peter Barry and thinking, that he'd about 2 stone of muscle put on over the winter. He'd a pair of thighs in him, and they just looked like they'd physically bulked up, and they really meant business that night. And I think I was going across the middle, Eddie, early in that second half to pick up a ball. And I think it was Michael. I have no recollection of it. I was laid out, concussed. I have no recollection whatsoever of the second half of that game. I just remember walking off the pitch after the game, pretty groggily, knowing that we got a hiding, and we did nothing in the 2 weeks after that, ahead of the championship match against Tipperary, and look at, they beat us pretty comfortably. But certainly there was a big change from '99 even to 2000. 2000 was really statement of intent that they were coming, they were a force, and they certainly physically laid down America that night. And we were probably going in different directions, Joe, I think, in terms of, we were coming to the end. They were certainly a team starting out, and we know the journey that they embarked on. In 2002, it was, again, look, we did a great year in 2001 in the sense that we did huge work done, and we lost a Tip by a point. Down in a real massive championship match down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. Nicky, I think, knew that, look, we were in good shape. It would be serious opposition, and we came out the wrong side of it. I know, was it 15-14 or something, and Tip went down and won the All-Ireland. But 2002, Tip beat us again. We came in through the kind of back door, but the worst possible start happened in that 2002 final, because DJ got a goal, let's say, inside the first minute. And it was one thing to concede a goal to Kilkenny. It was worse, doubly worse, to concede it to DJ, because everyone in the Kilkenny side just seemed to get a foot taller, because they knew when DJ was on, obviously they were going to be that bit harder to beat. And we were probably chasing that game, to be honest, but Kilkenny, I think, were pretty much always able to keep us at arm's length. I think there was one incident right in the second half where Alan Markham caught a ball, and I'd made a run, and he laid it off to me. It was, I would say, a centimetre from my hand, and if I'd got that, I'd have been in one thing with James McGarry, and it might have brought us back into it, given his life. But any time we looked like clawing it back, Kilkenny were able to respond and get scores, and I think they won that game by 7 or 8 points for a finish, and were probably good value for it. And
sorry, this match in Garran, this wasn't even a league match. This was just a pitch opening, like come down as friendly neighbours kind of thing.
This was a challenge show 2 weeks before the championship.
Right.
Obviously it was a serious match for us, probably our last big match before we played Tip. But we ran into a buzzsaw that night. Kilkenny just played like a team that, okay, we could be meeting these guys later in the year. It's lay down America. Right. And they were just so sharp, so physically strong that night.
It was a benchmarking match for Brian, definitely.
Definitely, yeah. We got the training wrong as well. So, I mean, it was for us, we were just tired, totally overtrained. But look, they were miles ahead of us that night. And as Eddie said, I mean, it was really a statement of intent. I think that, I mean, we were comprehensively beaten, Joe, and it was a real setback for us. And we did nothing, as I said, between that match, I say, in the championship. It's all about just trying to get the energy levels up. And we, to be honest about it, we were pretty poor against Tip, and we were well beaten.
It obviously was a benchmark, Eddie, if you both remember it all these years on it. You wouldn't remember every pitch opening match, I'm sure, so you remember that one.
No, geez, yeah, no, I had a particularly enjoyable night because I think DJ fed me about 1-3. So it was. I think I was the only one that probably played that night that didn't start in the All-Ireland final in 2000. I'm not sure who was missing on the night, if it was Brian McAvoy or somebody like that, and they played Henry out the half-forward line, but Henry obviously in 2000 went back inside. But then, it was something, like I said, we went down in 2002 as well. I think we went down to Ennis in the league and we had a good day. We won by 4 or 5, but it was the start of, we'll say, Henry at centre forward. And I think Peter slotted in at centre back. And I think he put a huge value on that result because it was away, it was in Ennis. And I think, anytime you went on the road in the league, and it carried as well, because I think if you go fast forward to the 2002 All-Ireland final, Martin Comerford and Henry Shefflin started at 14-11 on loan, and Shawnee Mack. And again, that was just Brian, seeing what the boys were made of, putting them into competition with two guys like that who were the spine of that team. And again, I was marking Frank Lohan. I think, trying to think who was, Gilly was inside and maybe a full forward on Noel Hickey. There were matchups that he wanted to test where we were.
So that 02 final, you see, we've mentioned 97 Clare win en route to their All-Ireland win. That was an All-Ireland semi-final. There's the 99 All-Ireland semi-final, which Kilkenny win, and then you've mentioned that pitch opening in Garran. 02, the final, Jamesie, like, in some respects, it's you can kind of think Clare are older in 02. The memory plays tricks, older than they were. Like, you're still only 30 years old in 2002. You're right there in your prime in many respects at a glance, and you score 4 points in that All-Ireland final. Eddie scores 1. But would you compare maybe for us the intensity and even the colour and the sense of adrenaline and belief in 2002 heading into that final versus what I sort of remember, maybe nostalgically or otherwise, but I remember of 97 and 95. It doesn't seem to have been the same energy for whatever reason, Jamesie.
Probably not. I think again, look, we beat Waterford, I think, beat Galway, I think, in the quarter-final, Joe, and I think we Waterford then in the semi-final. We had a great record against Waterford, didn't fear them, won the game, and really, I suppose it was kind of, a year that, I suppose, 2001, I think we had real intent, and I think we beat Kilkenny actually in the league semi-final that year, lost the league final to Tip. Bit of shadow box maybe in that one, and then we lost him in the championship, and our year was over. There was no back door in 2001. 2002 then, lost in the first round to Tip, and I suppose that was a big setback. So it just, I suppose, look, personally for me, I suppose I was struggling as well for form and struggling with injury,
right,
not playing well. So certainly the build up to the game was more low key maybe from our perspective, but the game itself, Joe, if there's certain games that you'd love to have back, I think if you asked any of our team, that game is right up there, because we felt we just didn't lay a glove at Kilkenny, we didn't break a hurley, that we never got to grips with or got into the game or got into their faces the way we maybe needed to. And as I said, it was the worst possible start. You're geared up for it, and Henry, I think, put a long ball in. It looked like it was going wide, and suddenly DJ just gets that little deflection on it into the net past Fitzy, and you know what I mean, straight away, that this is going to be hard fought, that you're going to get nothing easy anyway. But when you concede probably a softish goal like that, and then who you conceded to, because he was so, he was, I suppose, look at the greatest player probably that I played against. He was when DJ went well and played well, you felt that Kilkenny played well, and that the guy you were marking got a foot taller. So as I said, that game, we just felt, or I'd certainly look back on it and with regrets that we didn't perform, but it was more that we didn't, bring the physicality and the intensity and the aggression, all the things that you probably wanted to bring and needed to bring to have any chance. And we didn't do that. And we probably had a relatively, I suppose less experienced forward line in the sense that Tony Griffin, Tony Carmody, some of those guys were playing, and maybe you needed maybe a PJ O'Connell and a Conor Clancy, and maybe one of the older, maybe more experienced warrior kind of types, in there. And Kilkenny were just a step bit more maybe mature or seasoned, or whatever way you want to put it, or at least that's the way it felt for me.
Yeah.
In the forward line, and
right.
I think we just we were chasing it, I think, from the off, Joe.
Yeah.
And it's certainly a game that I'd say that Clare team would love to have back.
Yeah, I bet.
Not that we'd have won it, but certainly that we'd have maybe put up a sterner and a stiffer challenge than what we presented on the day.
So again, 7 times in championship history: 1932, Laurie Maher's final, and then these 6 times in these 9 years. I suppose, Eddie, maybe All-Ireland final aside, maybe one of the more memorable occasions in 2004, Semple Stadium, All-Ireland quarter-final stages, and it's a draw, 113 to 113. It's amazing how the scorelines have changed. 113 apiece between Kilkenny and Clare in All-Ireland quarter-final Semple, and Kilkenny will win the replay 111 to 9 points. Like, Clare scoring 9 points in game of hurling in the replay is kind of an insane one. So Semple Stadium, does that one, this is when Anthony Daly's come in. Does that one stick out in the memory for you, the 113 apiece? That Henry Shefflin stuck a penalty over the bar, I think, in that game.
Yeah, I remember, James, you said about they didn't bring the war. Well, they bottled it up for 2 years and brought it in 2004 in the first match in Croke Park. It was also the first time we kind of seen a real out-and-out sweeper, in that Alan Markham played as a second 6, and he really frustrated us because we weren't anyway used to that. It was a new concept. The rest of the guys were touch tight. I do remember all of the Clare all the Clare forwards came over to wish me luck before, or the Clare backs came over to wish me luck before the ball was thrown in. And I got a couple of good jostles, but I was... Sorry,
I stop you there. All of the individual Clare defenders came up and said something to you?
Well, they physically introduced themselves to me. About four or five of them, definitely. 4 of them anyway, before the ball was thrown in. I think it was because I was on Jerry O'Grady, and he was a young guy at the time. And I think they were probably softening me up, but it worked because I was gone at half time. And
so is that like if you dare have a good game here, you'll have us to answer to?
I don't know. It was psychological warfare, and it worked because I bought it and I was gone at half time. But I remember, I think John Hine came in and got a goal for Kilkenny, and Henry did take a point then to square it up. I think it was even the same day. Was that the one, Jamesy, that I think Tony Carmody or Gilligan hit James McGarry square in the face with a ball from 5 yards out, and it bounced over the bar when it looked as if a goal was really on? I think
it was actually
and Tommy, I think
that game was actually that game was actually in Croke Park, the draw match.
Yeah. And, was it? Sorry, I thought it was Semple. Yeah. Croker, okay.
Yeah. The replay was in Semple, but yeah, you're right, Eddie. I think Tony Carmody had a chance. I think it was Tony Carmody from about 5 yards out.
Yeah, and had that gone in, was lights out.
Yeah, and as I said, just hit it. The one McGarry, in fairness, he stood tall, but I think he hit him in the forehead with it. I think, and it bounced over the bar. And
I think was that the day that
might have gone over the line.
Was that the day I think that Tommy might have got an early shower? I think.
Yeah, Tommy got sent off early, I think. Yeah, Tommy got 2 yellows. Yeah, and
the only time ever.
It meant then that we could play as the sweeper, I suppose, and it was still 5-on-5, I suppose, up at the other end of the field. I came on as a sub, I think, just before half time, whatever. And it was hard fought. It was tough. Yeah. It was intense. What I remember about that game was we were mad for extra time, Eddie.
Yeah, there was actually a bit of a powwow over that as well. But when we went to Thurles, I remember it was probably one of the first times that even we introduced, like, we obviously had seen their hands and we decided to counter it. Now there's rumours abound that Willie O'Connor may have been the one that fed the proposal to Brian. He wasn't involved, but he suggested that Jerry O'Grady was going to mark whoever came into the 13 spot. So what we done was Brian put me out 10 and he put Martin Comerford in 13 and told Martin Comerford that he was to go out and occupy Markham. So basically if you have someone like Jerry O'Grady was that day detailed to mark somebody, and you do that and he brings you out and just occupies the sweeper, which we did in the first 20 minutes, and I had the freedom of a whole flank, and I remember I think I got 1-2 or that early, and even one of the shots I got off hit Markham on the head and went over the bar. And again, it was just something tactical. I think Shaf Fitz made his debut, and it just worked for us. It got us into a great position, but we probably didn't bury them enough. We didn't get the return that we needed, because Clare obviously adjusted then. And once they went and countered us and went straight up, they really, really put us under pressure. And obviously then you have the famous Jerry Quinn and Henry incident as well. So I'm not trying to stir it up. I'm just saying these were all things that fed into the occasion.
Yeah.
And I will say one last thing. It teed up the following year. The rivalry is what we're talking about here tonight. I think it really enhanced that rivalry and brought it forward to the next round of the league. So there was a lot of things went on in Thurles that day.
Jamesy, I feel like I should give you a reply here to some of these memories.
Yeah, well, Joe, I remember it was my last game in a Clare jersey.
Wow.
I again, like that, I came on as a sub.
You'd be too modest to say you scored the equaliser.
Well, I scored equaliser in the drawn match. I think got right, but the second game, I think we scored 9. I got 2 points after we given 2 passes, and I was absolutely cleaned and hurled off the field by Tommy Walsh. So it was time to retire and hang up the boots after that. But like again, Joe, it was one of those games where Kilkenny got ahead, were better than us, should have put the game away, left us hanging in there, and we were still kind of in the game, like not playing well, struggling, but still hanging on. And it was probably a lot less comfortable for Kilkenny than it should have been. But
Right.
yeah, I think at the end of the day, it was a 5-point hammering maybe in one sense, but it felt closer than that, and it was a tough, tight, intense game. I think Brian Lohan as well might have pulled his hamstring early on. I think he was gone early. I think, Eddie, I don't know if you can remember that. And I feel that Lohan...
Yeah, maybe so, but I think he stayed on.
yeah, quite possibly, yeah.
And done a good job.
Quite possibly.
Jamesy, what was it like? So you're 32, that's your final season. The dynamics of Daly coming in as manager, obviously, I mean, he's a teammate and suddenly he's the boss. What was that like?
Well, I kind of made my mind up to walk away after 03, Joe. Just injury, just kept getting injured, and as I said, was struggling for form. Played well in 01, had a really good year in 01, but 02, didn't really play well. It was very much up and down. 03 didn't play particularly well, and I kind of made my mind up to walk away after 03, and then Daly was appointed manager, and sure, the phone call came, and there was no way you were going to turn him down. And I really enjoyed the year. It was just I suppose a different kind of, seeing Johnny Glynn come in as physical trainer, whatever. It was just different, I suppose, from what we've been used to. And I really enjoyed the year. It was, we were, I thought, in a great position heading into the championship opener against Waterford. We were flying, and I think I'd pulled my hamstring about 2 weeks before that, and I knew I wasn't starting. But I mean, I remember, watching the lads train on the Friday night before we played Waterford, and if you'd asked me, I just said, put the house on Clare that weekend. We came out on the Sunday. I got absolutely lamped by Waterford. Never turned up. And, there was a lot of soul searching, I think, by Dalo, and I'd say by the players after that we really let him down. But we regrouped, and, I think we had a kind of good run through the qualifiers, and we could have beaten you, Eddie, in the drawing game. We certainly had you on the rack a little bit. Yeah. If Tony had maybe taken that chance, I think it would have probably got us over the line. And we'd have loved extra time that day, because the Clare crowd that were there, there might have been too many of them, but they were pretty vocal. And I think Cody was out at the same time firing your lads up. But I think going to the replay probably suited you a little bit more, because you had a chance obviously to figure out what we'd done and regroup, and certainly tactically, Brian got it very much right in the replay.
And Jamesy, for Anthony Daly to go in with still a lot of the 90s crew there, and quite a few of them were still there even for that last Kilkenny game in 06, and maybe that was really the ending of things. But for Daly to go in and go from teammate to manager, what was his persona? I mean, it probably would have been difficult for him to be kind of disciplinarian as such. He would have had to speak to guys on a level. What's your memory of how he made that transition? Because it's not easy, one, being young, and two, with former teammates.
Look, it probably wasn't, but with massive respect for him, Joe. And look, there was, I mean, again, the type of guy you were talking about. Look at Shawnee McMahon, Ollie, Brian, Colin Lynch, Frank. I mean, they were all good trainers. Fitzy, like all fellas that, were self-motivated. Wanted to win. Wanted to perform, and so it wasn't like it's these guys were going to be out drinking and Daly had to crack the whipper. You know, it was nothing like that.
Yeah.
It was probably just building on the good work, I suppose, that maybe Cyril had done or whatever. But it was just, as I said, there was a real sense of, you know, letting him down ahead of that first round of the championship, because I thought we were in a great place. You know, training had gone really well. Training had gone too well, if anything. And there was an assumption, I think, that, you know, it was just going to happen for us rather than making it happen. And, you know, we'd inflicted a fair bit of pain on Watford over the years, and they were up for it big time. And obviously, you know, had a really good team at the time. And they just got a run on us. And you know, we never came to the fight, I suppose. And that was, I think, the way Daly referenced it afterwards, that, right, you know, you got to come to the fight ready to fight, and we just didn't. But I really enjoyed the year, you know, and as I said, you know, it was one of the more memorable ones for me. And we had our chance probably to put Kilkenny to the sword that day, and we didn't take it, and we paid the price in the replay. Okay,
fair enough. And one last one, Eddie, I think you mentioned, did you say that drawn game and the subsequent win then in 2004, that set up the league encounter in 2005, so that was tasty, was it?
Oh yeah, I went down to, it was a real wet day. I think it was televised on TG4, and it was, even in the warm-up, I just said, oh, I've never experienced an atmosphere like it, in terms of just, it was a real hostility and a baying for blood. And I was working with a guy from Clare at the time. I remember he shouted in the railing at me. He says, you're in for a battle today or whatever. And I remember in the second, you know, it was hot and heavy, and there was good, you know, wet conditions. So it was a battle, and Brian Cody was looking forward to it. We expected nothing different, but I can distinctly remember in the first half, maybe, or the second half, a sideline down under the far side, and I think Ollie Baker's hurl fell on the ground, and Paddy Mullally picked up Baker's hurl, and Ollie put out the hand, and Paddy just fired it into the stand. And next thing, I just saw Baker's arm swinging, and I think his fist fitted right in through Paddy Mullally's guard and burst him or knocked him flat on the ground. And there's a bit of pushing and shoving, and poor Paddy Mullally had about 4 stitches on the inside of his eye. But I was kind of wrestling with Jerry O'Grady at the time, and we jogged in or whatever as this was all going on, and there was grand, just whatever, and hot ball sideline and what was going on. And I remember kind of Jerry O'Grady and stuff were wrestling or kind of pulling at each other's hurls or just jockeying for position. But I was standing on the end line at the time, and I can feel Dalo's breath on my neck. He was that close to me on the end line, telling Jerry O'Grady to give it to him or whatever, like. And it was just a real battle. And I think it was a point in the end, I think, if I remember correctly. But it was a great game to just get over the line, and it just had everything. And like, we were going back on the bus, and like, they were the matches you relished, because and Brian put so much value on those ones, going on the road, getting a big win. And I think he obviously has, you know, there was a story behind it. So it just really bubbles up the rivalry. And, you know, obviously in 2006 then, when we collided again in the championship, it just brought the best out of both teams the same day again. But I have to say, it was a match I will not forget for a long time.
Wow,
it was
okay.
just a brilliant atmosphere.
Jamesie nursing a hot coffee in the stand, delighted to be away from it at that stage.
Yeah, quite happy. I mean, obviously, look at Tommy, JJ, Noel Hickey, yeah, Kavanagh, Peter Barry. There was plenty of physicality that Kilkenny defence, all right. Yeah, so yeah, quite happy now, Joe, to be sitting up in the stand at that point.
Well, we're going to chat about the weekend. So Kilkenny, Clare, once again, that's kind of whetted the appetite, that conversation just there. That's 5:30 Saturday. Limerick, Galway, Sunday 3:30. We're back in just 1 second. Eddie Brennan, Jamesie O'Connor, staying with us. And you're very welcome back. We are talking GAA. We're talking the hurling semi-finals this weekend. Kilkenny, Clare on the Saturday 5:30. Limerick, Galway 3:30. Eddie Brennan, Jamesie O'Connor have been reminiscing about the Kilkenny-Clare rivalry of years gone by. If you've just tuned in, it was rather strange in that this is just, it was 7 times in championship history. 1932 All-Ireland final, then 6 times between 97 and 06, and now here we go again. So it's novel in some respects, although with that lovely bit of history, Jamesie. I mean, the thing, and I think you made this point in your Sunday Independent piece, the thing which jumps out about this Clare generation from, say, 2013's win on, is they really haven't played at Croke Park all that often, or certainly not as often as they might have thought they would.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, if you'd told me in 2013, coming out of Croke Park, that Tony Kelly would be, wouldn't get back there for 5 years, I wouldn't have believed you. And even since, it's taken another 4 years to get back to this point. And we're on the cusp of winning our second under 21. They win a third under 21 in a row the following year, and we've got this, in our mind, golden generation of players that for whatever reason it didn't happen. Now a lot of that I suppose has to do with Pádraig Maher, Brennan Maher, and all those great Kilkenny players, Richie Hogan, TJ, etc. That they just unfortunately happen to be in the same eras. But you compare that lack of Croke Park experience with what Kilkenny have. I mean, TJ's probably played 40 plus championship matches in Croke Park. It'll be Tony Kelly's fourth. That's an incredible statistic.
Yeah, I just can't believe that Tony Kelly.
Wow.
Tony Kelly's played at Croke Park as a senior hurler 3 times. How? It's incredible.
It is, yeah. And as I said, especially, when they win the first All Ireland so early, you just think that, from a Clare perspective, I was gearing up for, years of Munster finals and trips to Croke Park and big days out. And there's a thesis probably in there somewhere. I think I said on Sunday that it just didn't happen. But it is what it is. And I think, look at the lads, maybe now they're older, David McInerney, John Conlon, Shane O'Donnell, Tony, the lads that were there maybe in 2013. I think they appreciated all the more, the effort and the work that it's taken to get back here. And I think one thing about Clare teams in Croke Park, Joe, that, traditionally when we've gotten there, we've performed and played well. We might have always won, but, stage fright hasn't been an issue. And certainly my team, like, we love Croke Park. We always felt it was our field. We performed there. We played well there. And obviously the lads in 2013, didn't exhibit any stage fright either. So you'd certainly be hoping that, for Diarmuid Ryan and Rory Hayes and all those guys that maybe, haven't played a big championship match in Croke Park, that, they'll perform and they'll play well, and they won't be overawed or, inhibited by the occasion. So that's certainly something, historically, is that you're hoping carries on.
You said in your piece 6 of them have never played at Croke Park before, again, which is extraordinary, really. One of the conversations which popped up last week on the show was about Derry playing at Croke Park and how Croke Park would impact on their football. And the point was made, as is so often made, that the dimensions are not actually that different at Croke Park. But speaking to different footballers, they said that it's more the surface plays faster as much as anything, and so the game is a different game because everything is so much faster. So I'm wondering, Jamesie, I always remember you saying that you loved Semple Stadium. You felt Semple was a real forwards pitch. What does Croke Park do to a hurling game? Like, does it speed it up the same way it does in football, or what's the big difference, if any?
Well, the old Croke Park, Joe, in 95, Lugnan would narrow the dimensions of Cusack Park in. So when we got out of Munster, we had to narrow the sidelines, came in Cusack Park to mimic Croke Park. The old Croke Park was much tighter, and there'd be line balls plenty in training, heading up to the game. But obviously the new Croke Park is like Thurles, loads of space. Obviously it's a fast pitch, but it won't be too dissimilar to the Páirc Uí Chaoimh or Thurles, or Cusack Park in Ennis even is a relatively big pitch. It might look like that in the television, but there's loads of space in it. It feels big. So I mean, in that sense, I'd imagine it's much different for the footballers, where it's bigger than Clones and it's bigger than maybe Salthill or whatever. But from a hurler's perspective, I don't think it'll make any great difference. And the ball, anyway, the way the game they're playing now, it's ball to hand. Yeah, do you know what I mean? So in that sense, it's not an issue. Yeah,
I suspect we probably overdo the Croke Park thing anyway, Eddie. But particularly when it comes to hurling, it makes less of a difference, or no?
I think all this stuff is probably as much optics in your mind as well as anything else. I think it's probably the space and the sideline contributes to that a little bit, because the crowd is back for me a little bit. I remember taking on kind of that thing of looking at all the sizes of the pitches a few years ago, and I think Croke Park is the full maximum. I think is a 145 by 90 metres, whereas other places, Thurles is maybe a metre or two narrower, but it's full length. Nolan Park is slightly narrower and slightly shorter, but in Nolan Park then your stands are right in on top of you. So I think it's as much the optics of it. I think when you look across and you see loads of grass in front of you, it may not be the full width of the pitch, but Croke Park then is the absolute perfect surface. It's kind of high in the middle and just floats out to the side. So I think it's when you're on one wing and you look across, there's just that vision of being a long way across to the far side and trying to cover off that space. But look, it's as the surface goes, that and Thurles as well, like there's great surfaces on them for hurling. if the ball has been delivered good,
So what aspects are looming large in your mind, Eddie, ahead of Saturday, the winning and losing of this game?
I think, look, obviously, I think Clare have a fairly strong team, a very settled team as well. Like, I think, and their bench, it's kind of, what you're going to get with them coming down the straight, a few impact subs and that. But I think there's a number of areas that Kilkenny are going to have to look at. I think Iver Quilligan, to me, this season, I wasn't really giving him credit last year, but this season he has brought his game right up behind Nicky Quaid's in terms of his distribution of puckouts. He seems to have that little move where he's able to find David Fitzgerald and even Ryan Taylor when they break out from the outside on their own and hit them with that. And, you have even a stat there, I think, maybe back in the Munster final, where they got 12 points directly off puckouts that he struck, where he was able to find a man and put the ball over the bar. So he's a threat. I think the Kilkenny team are going to have to be very much concentrated on that, because he has the range to go short, long. He can go really long into Peter Duggan as well. So my concern would be if he's on his game and is able to hit his men, and Croke Park does give him plenty of space to hit. But equally, if the Clare forwards kind of move around a little bit, or they maybe drop the ball in around the middle and carry it, I think that could, maybe try isolate a Kilkenny back in space. Like, I mean, I think if they do something like that, it could test Kilkenny. Whereas I think if they set up, I think the way maybe they set up against Limerick, they kind of almost mimicked Limerick or shadowed Limerick, or mirrored them really. I think if they go kind of that man-to-man thing, I think that will suit Kilkenny a little bit. But they have so many options up front. I think the Kilkenny backs, this is going to be the ultimate test. I thought they done really well in the Leinster final, communication and how they covered each other. But this is going to be a test way above that, because Galway's movement was poor in that Leinster final. So I think my concern is that Kilkenny will like to keep their shape. And if Clare start moving them all over the place, I think they've done that in the league semi-final, maybe in 16 a few years ago. It was wing forwards bombing up. So I think whereas Kilkenny will like to keep a good structure to the pitch, and I think Limerick, I thought they'd done that a little bit against Limerick. Okay, Tony Kelly and Ryan Taylor get the freedom, but I think with Duggan as the target man in there, and whoever playing off him, that they are a potent unit.
Jamesie, Clare played very well through the Munster Championship and then got out of jail touch against Wexford. So what's looming larger in your mind?
Yeah, I think they played 5 really good matches in Munster, Joe. I was really impressed. I mean, from day one against Tip, they were at it. They hurled well, played really well against Cork. Obviously, the 2 games against Limerick, even Waterford, minus, the few starters that Brian rested. And I suppose, look, there was always going to be, an emotional toll and a physical toll, I suppose, exactly with the Munster final that made us vulnerable the last day. But certainly there'd be a concern in Clare that, what we delivered against Wexford won't be good enough against Kilkenny, because even though, we outscored Wexford, whatever it was, 192 points, in the last 15 minutes, I mean, Wexford mistakes, certainly helped us. And, we simply can't afford to not perform for as long as we did, cough up the goals that we did, and get away with it. So, look, I think the lads themselves know that, look, there was a relief that we got over the line not playing well. There was obviously positives to take out of it, given that when the game was there to be won, we found something. When it didn't appear that it was going to be our day. But I think the lads know that, against Kilkenny, Joe, they don't give you anything. You have to earn it. Kilkenny will bring what Kilkenny always bring in terms of the intensity, the work rate. Brian will have analysed the team as well. He'll try to get the matchups right. And they'll probably feel as well that, look, maybe Clare are vulnerable under that high ball, and Kilkenny have the guys to exploit that. So that's a concern that, whether it's TJ, Rowan Cody or Walsh or whatever inside, that, we have to do a better job than we certainly did against Wexford of handling that. But games sometimes don't pan out the way you think they will. I mean, we could cope admirably with the high ball and get caught then where, they run at us and create overlaps or whatever. You know what I mean? So I just think Clare have to bring it from the off, Joe. That, like, Kilkenny have lost the last 2 All-Ireland semi-finals, and Brian's record, prior to that was impeccable. And I mean, if you're a Kilkenny player, heading in Owen Murphy or, whether it's Hugh Law or whatever, the prospect of losing a 3rd All-Ireland semi-final in a row, which is the worst time, the worst game to lose. That's not something you want to contemplate. And I know, I mean, going back to my own career, having lost the Munster final 93, 94, we were absolutely hell-bent that it wasn't going to happen in 95. So they'll be hugely motivated to make sure that they get back to the final. So, look, I think everyone in Clare is under no illusions how tough it's going to be. And that said, I think if we can get back to the form that we showed in the Munster final, I think we have the guys that can trouble Kilkenny. Tony obviously is in an incredibly rich vein of form, and do Kilkenny man mark him? Do they trust that they can hand him off and that someone else will pick him up when he drifts out the field? Shane O'Donnell could end up on the edge of the square, giving you something different. And we've got guys up front that and guys coming off the bench as well that have to be watched and have to be handled. So we certainly feel, I think, that we've got enough firepower if we play well to win the game. But we're going to have to play well, and we're under no illusions as to how difficult it's probably going to be.
Eddie, I guess with Kilkenny, we're into maybe a sort of extended period of transition as they look to rebuild and go again. Are they getting better? If you take it from that win against Limerick in 19 was a real maybe high point for Cody personally, and then the 2 semi-final defeats over the last 2 years. Would you say Kilkenny are a better team than they were last year and a better team than they were the year before? They're kind of a tricky team to get a read on in some respects. Yeah,
they are, Joe. And I think, one of the concerns I have too is that, some of, Owen Cody is class in my view, and one of the players of the future that we're going to be building our attacking threats around. But he has been curtailed. Teams have managed to nullify his influence. So the problem there, as I would see it, or the issue that Kilkenny need to do, is they need to ensure that they're able to supply him and feed him and get him into positions where he can do harm. The Kilkenny forwards probably haven't been playing with confidence that you'd like. I think you're going into an All-Ireland semi-final a little bit hopeful that things will happen, as opposed to saying, yeah, do you know what, our forwards are actually... So that, to me, is the issue, is that they need to hit the ground running. They need a huge performance from our forwards. Then we need a forward to go mad on the day and hit that 1-3, 1-4 kind of game and know that TJ is going to hit all the frees. But I think, Brian has occasionally pulled a card out of his sleeve and do something a little bit unusual. So it could be the position of somebody a little bit different. I mean, I've spoken long about how I would like to see TJ and Cody in there, or, just mix it up a little bit, put thinking, because I think we're a little bit predictable to play against. I mean, I agree with Jamesie. Look, with a Brian Cody team, effort and battle is not going to be an issue. But it's just maybe the game smarts and being able to identify. I think that's why I think this is why we're probably a little bit more hopeful. I give them every chance. I want nothing else only Kilkenny to win. I think we need a big performance, and maybe I'm hoping that we're on the brink of that, because this is the stage that you have to do it now. And I think we need a few lads to just really let the handbrake off on Sunday a little bit, because, like you said there, Brian, I think out now, there's no way Tony Kelly is going to be given the freedom of lads handing them off. I'll be shocked if there's not somebody detailed for him, because he will look at him and say he has to be stopped from having an influence on the match right to minute 73. But equally, Shane O'Donnell and co are doing harm. So there's big pressure on our backs and the team as a whole. But it's how they set up and how they tackle Clare and maybe get on a roll. But we need a big performance, and that performance, unfortunately, that polished, confident performance hasn't been there to date.
So we know what the heart says. Eddie, who do you see winning?
I do. I think I do. I have a feeling we're going to sneak it, because I suppose maybe I'm hopeful that we're going to deliver a big performance, because they need to now. I think we need really Owen Murphy on top of his game in his deliveries. But I definitely think that it's going to have to be that 9 out of 10 performance from a lot of players. We need someone, like I said, we need somebody to shoot the lights out from play, somebody to have a bolter of a game, and then to get something off our bench. Because if Clare mix it up and bring a few lads on, we've seen in the last couple of matches, I think they got 1-4 and 3 in the Munster final off their bench. So they have a bit of quality there. But I just have a feeling Kilkenny might just edge it out, hopefully.
Jamesie, what's your feeling?
Yeah, I mean, again, I give us a great chance, Joe. I mean, Kilkenny, I've seen Kilkenny 3 times this year, and I still don't know what to make of them, because I thought they were excellent against Dublin. But, you're then wondering where Dublin's form is at. In Nolan Park for the Wexford match, Kilkenny got very one-dimensional very early. and didn't play well, and it was a big step back. And the Leinster final was a really hard watch. I watched it back again this evening, and there was no pattern, no flow to it, but it was just Kilkenny, staying in the fight, working incredibly hard, getting turnovers, winning frees, and TJ nailing everything that he looked at, and a really honest performance. But even looking at Kilkenny, you're wondering, does Brian know his first choice 15? He's had 4 weeks, which I think is massive in terms of being able to play those matches in training, probably where guys get a chance to show what they're doing, and he probably has a better idea now of what his best 15 maybe is heading into Sunday. But I just think there's something about us this year, Joe. There's maybe hopefully unfinished business with Limerick, although Galway might upset the apple cart on Sunday. And I think that if our guys play well, I think we just might have a bit more in attack. But just hoping that they turn up, and if they do, and if they bring what they brought against Limerick, hopefully it'll be enough.
Okay, well listen, that's beautifully whet the appetite for Saturday's game, 5:30. We'll talk Limerick Galway later in the week, but Eddie Brennan, Jamesie O'Connor, that was great, thanks so much. I'm off to try and dig out the 2005 league match between Kilkenny and Clare after this conversation. That's my main protocol here.
Oh, you'll enjoy that one, Joe. Good luck.
Thanks very much. See you fellas.
All the best.
Cheers, Joe. Cheers, Eddie.